So, well, it'd be interesting to hear, even how you first were drawn into participating, how this whole thing was presented and how you.
Okay. Just so you know, I'm really a stream of consciousness person. So if I get off track, just try and reel me back on where I was. So I'll be like the opposite of Shantae. Cause were you all here when she was here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she was original as well.
Yeah.
But yes, we're very opposite. So I got dragged into the theater company through the theater side. So I'm an actor, I'm a theater person. And I had also taken a class with Vanita. And does everybody know Vanita? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I had taken a class with Vanita my freshman year. And I can't for the life of me remember what that class was. But I think it was something like theater and education or something like that. There was very few people in the class, and I remember I did some kind of drama session on AIDS awareness for young students. That's kind of what I remember from her class. But because of meeting her, she encouraged me to join in on what she was thinking about doing in the spring, which was the spring of my sophomore year is the first class that started at IMWR. And that's where we came up with the name. Because we had, did Shantae tell you we had this history of putting the paper down on the floor, and we would write I am, we are, and every day we would come in and check in, and we would write how we were. We would write that.
Oh no, we didn't hear about the writing it.
Okay, yeah. So we would all write something down about our day, that however it was. So that was our way of checking in. So we would check in a circle. Did she tell you about that?
Yeah, but I didn't know about the writing it down.
Yeah,
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so we would have what's that called? The paper rolls?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Like the great
the butcher
big.
paper.
Yeah, butcher paper. So, we also would, to write stuff down on there, and that's how the name came about. So I joined the class. Vanita had a J-term class that did a production, but then the spring semester is when we all got together, and that's when the theater company formed out of that class. And that class was crazy because when we met, we started doing these exercises literally within the first day, second day of class. We were sharing crazy personal information. And Vanita was scared as shit. She was like, oh, and as a teacher, I've been a teacher, I can totally see how that would be like, whoa, everybody slow down. And our first show was on date rape. I don't know what you guys know, so please forgive me if I start to drone on about all the stuff you already know. But so just to give you a little kind of idea of what kind of stories were being shared and what kind of personal information was just right when we're meeting each other, and we're in these little small groups of 3, sitting on the floor in the classroom downstairs, and it's not like, hi, my favorite color is purple, and my name is Niki, and it was so intense. It's like it was just meant to be. It just all of a sudden there was just this crazy connection between all of it, love-hate connection between the class. So that's how I got drawn in through theater and through Vanita. Let's see, let let me give you some general info. So I was co-president of the theater company the 3 years that I was there. I was also, I don't know if this really pertains to this class, but it was part of it. I was so committee chairs of the first couple building bridges conference that we started. I think my junior year is the year we started it. Right, building bridges is probably right over a little over 20 now, right? Yes, okay, so, and a lot of that was born from this sort of social kind of awakening that the theater company was born out of. It was similar, not the same people, but similar people. You know, so we were kind of all friends kind of across campus, and it was sort of that similar diversity, like, not really awareness, but, you know, sort of like trying to shake things up, you know? So that's how that kind of came up, born out of that too. And so then the theater company also performed, obviously, at the, and you still do that every year, right? Okay, so you still do E Pluribus GAC every year? Okay, so I believe we were invited, man, did Shantae know? The first time, I can't remember if we were invited to do E Pluribus GAC, is that what you still call it? Oh, because they don't like GAC, that's right. After I graduated, they're like, GAC? No, taking that C off, it's not cool enough. It's like GA, literally like the year after I graduated is when I got like transitioned to like GA instead of GAC, but whatever. So I think we were invited to perform for that the second year, so that would have been 96 for that. Yeah. Yeah, somewhere right around there. Yeah. And so that was really exciting for us. I don't know if you know this, but we were not sanctioned by the school at all for the first couple years, actually. We were like really bastard stepchild of the theater. The actual theater department wanted nothing to do with us. The theater students did not want to talk to us. They did not want us to be legitimized. The school in general would not put their name, we couldn't put their name, like, you know, it was like we were our own thing for probably 2 years. So like the first conference we went to, we had to do it on our own because, you know, we couldn't affiliate ourselves like officially with the school. I have a theater minor. So I have a criminal justice and psychology double major and a music and theater minor. Yeah. So I'm a little, like, when she said I have like sort of like a crazy past, I do, but, so my theater minor, I had to actually specifically petition for it because they would not allow any of my IMWR theater classes or theater company participation to be allowed as part of my theater minor. So that's how we were when we started. Okay, let me tell you, let's stop for a second. Let me just give you a brief timeline of me so that you kind of get an understanding. So that was what I did for school. That's the majors I got. When I graduated here, I worked for a year at the Hoffman Center, which is, I worked as a counselor for the male juvenile sex offenders. And then after that, I worked for a while as a counselor in some high schools up in the cities, using some drama techniques, some drama therapy type things. There were some guys that used to do drumming circles with the kids and stuff, so, you know, similar like music therapy. Then I took a sharp turn and spent several years sucking my soul out of my body and working in the corporate environment. And it was horrible, which is not for everybody, just for me. It did not work well, but I actually lived with Heather, who you will meet. Her name is Heather Tollefson, but it was Rodinius when I knew her. She moved to Arizona, so I was like, what the hell, I'll move to Arizona. So I moved to Arizona and lived with her and hung out and worked a corporate job and worked events and did stuff that I hated. And then I realized what I missed, so I went to ASU and I got my master's degree in theater and education at ASU and my teaching certificate, where I also sort of specialized in theater for social change. So if you know any names like Johnny Saldana, he's a big guy in theater for social change. He was my advisor. That's what I did there. Then I taught at a high school. I taught theater in a high school, and I used a lot of theater for social change stuff in the theater classroom, because just those tools in themselves, I'm sure you can see, really lend themselves to people getting to know each other and breaking down walls. And in a theater classroom in high school, it's very useful. Especially, I was in a really rich, very rich white neighborhood, which seems a little odd, but I've kind of run the gamut. I worked with these really like super nice, like Scottsdale, Arizona kids, and I've worked with all the at-risk kids in downtown Phoenix as a summer program, helping them learn job skills and stuff like that, that we did there. And sometimes some of the problems are very similar, actually, on the extremes. But so I did that, and then my other stuff happened with my personal life. So I moved to Los Angeles, which is where I live now. And I am getting back into the acting world, so I'm being an actor in Los Angeles, and I really suck at serving, so I started a pet sitting business. So now I own a pet sitting business, and I'm an actor, and that's where I'm at now. So I've done all those things. Let's see. Let's go back to, did Shantae tell you about the major fight that we had one time in the, okay. So you're like, oh, really? So, okay, because, remember, we started as a class, and then Vanita was our advisor. And I can't remember, I mean, it all kind of blurs for me, but Vanita left because she was a visiting professor. So we were really student run because Vanita was gone and we didn't have anybody. And Vanita left a year before you got here, right? Mm-hmm. So there was a year before where we were like, what the fuck are we doing? Where our advisor was Denise. Do you know Denise?
Denise Iverson Payne was the pearl of
Okay. So do you have your phone out? So sorry, it's just it's a reaction of teaching like high school students, and I'm like, what? Why are you texting? But I'm not your teacher, so it doesn't matter. So text away, make a phone call, I don't care. So sorry. See what happens when you're a teacher? You're automatically like, put your fucking phone away. Okay. So you're like, it's just a reaction. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm sorry. It's like this thing that happens where you're like,
I say it sometimes, and there are 100 times I don't say it.
Yeah. You know what I mean? But I mean, you see it, but I got it's like this weird like sense that anyway, I'm sorry. What was I saying before? I was so mean.
Denise.
Oh right, Denise. So we had this time period where it was just us, and Denise was our advisor, but we were sort of like, you don't know anything, you haven't been here, you're just coming in, because it's not like she had been part of any rehearsal process or anything. She was just a diversity person who had nothing to do with us, especially because the school didn't have anything to do with us. So she really, the only reason we knew who she was, because she was friends with Vanita. So she came in and we were like, F you, basically, you know?
Yeah.
Cause,
I didn't know that.
yeah, and eventually it came around, you know, but at first we were just like, we're our own thing, and cause we were so much like, the school hates us, the theater hates us, everybody, so we were like us against the world, you know? So we were like, who are you? You're not Benita, you know? So, you know, we were really on.
You're not my mommy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's how it was. And we're like, well, she's left, and we're all grown. We know what we're doing. So there were times where, and I don't know. Some of you are part of the theater company, and some of you are part of just like the class, right? So, but you can tell from this class what kind of work is done, and what kind of, I don't know how much work exercises you've done. Okay, so you get like that emotional sort of thing that can happen. I mean, there was one time we were rehearsing, I believe in the black box downstairs, and I don't know what happened, but it was just us. There was no, you know, director or anything like that. Well, we were the directors, obviously, but, there was no Denise or Vanita or anything. And it just got heated. We couldn't, we were dealing with these major topics, cause our shows we did about, racism and date rape and that kind of stuff. And so when we were workshopping that kind of stuff, or working on an invisible theater piece, who knows where it came from, but what I do know is we started screaming at each other, and there were chairs thrown. And I mean, I remember I was like, and I had a bit of a temper. I mean, I'm sure you can't tell that I had a temper when I was younger, but I had a bit of a temper. So I remember I was just screaming, and I think like June like threw a chair, and we were just I mean, it was just like fell apart. I mean, there were times where we were like, this theater company's over. There's no way it's gonna make it, because it was just us, and we didn't know, you know, what if it's like the blind leading the blind. So, I mean, not only did we get into disagreements in trying to do the work and making the shows, but there were a few points where it was like, it was bad, physical, like, we hated each other. I mean, we would have to have rehearsals just to talk about how, the shit we needed to get out, because we couldn't, we just were like, I fucking hate you, and I just, you know, like, we would have to derail an entire rehearsal just to get it all out, because, we were just so like, all the way, like all around each other all the time, and the relationships were just getting in the way, because we didn't know how to like do it all and separate it and be normal people at the same time. I don't know if that makes sense, but so we went to conferences and we performed. That was really exciting for us. We did an invisible theater piece at a theater conference with Vanita, and it was scary as hell, especially because we were all and we were in a room with all adults, grown-ass people, like old people, you know, and so we did it in the middle of like in the middle of one of the main, you know, when you go to a conference and there's like breakout panels, but then there's like the main panel room or whatever, we did it like in the middle of that. We like stood up, and who knows what it was about, I don't remember what it was about. Something about theater and politics, I'm sure, and giving the young people a voice. You doing that in practice instead of just in theory, which is what happens in the theater, right? You know, a lot of like people are like, oh, this theory, blah, 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 and then you're like, oh yeah, maybe we should actually practice that. So we did decided that that was scary. But also at one conference, and I don't think it was that one, but Boal was there.
Mhm.
And did Shantae tell you this at all? Did she remember?
No, someone else has told you, but we didn't
Okay.
get any details on it.
I have very few, I don't remember, but here's what I do remember. Boal was there, and we were like fanboys. I mean, we were like, couldn't contain ourselves. He was holding a special workshop that we couldn't get into because it was like before the conference and all that kind of, yeah, exactly. But what I do remember is there was a group of us, we were like, blah, 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 oh, blah, 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 let's get on the elevator, okay, on the elevator. In walks Boal. And the whole group of us, and Vanita was with us, and we were just like, like, we literally, like, it was so ridiculous. It was ridiculous. And you guys know, right? I mean, we're a bunch of, like, 19-year-old theater people who are like, I could be the loudest. No, you could be the loudest. No, I could be the, everybody look at me. You know? And, so he got off the elevator, and we were all like, oh my God, that was what? But no one said a word to him. We were like, when he got on the elevator, we were just like, oh my God. It was like, he was just like royalty. But he was. I mean, you heard everybody talking about him at the theater, like, oh, did you get to do the workshop? And oh my God, yeah, I got to do. And I remember at one point we got to stand in and watch as he was like working, and we were just like, I mean, he was just unbelievable. He was just amazing. But it was our only encounter with the actual Boal, but it's still a pretty big deal. We're still pretty awesome. So there was that.
It was the very first, just to chime in, that was the very first Pedagogy Theater Press conference ever that you were at.
Oh my
So
God!
way.
What the
So
hell?
was it in Nebraska?
Yes, Omaha.
So it was the very first one, and you know, what's his name, brought Boal to Omaha and announced it, and people went, and that has been going on every year since then, and we've presented, little panels in it a
Been there
number
a
of
few
years,
times.
yeah, but that, it doesn't
That's coming.
compare to being.
To having Boal, right? Well, do you see the common denominator in all these things?
Boal.
You're there.
Oh, yeah, that you were there.
Right? Okay, maybe not. Just kidding.
Yeah.
So we did that conference. I didn't realize that was the first Pedagogy of the Oppressed. That's pretty awesome. And we performed the date, or whatever we called it, performance then, which is a videotape. Do you know that there's
Where?
a videotape?
No,
Well,
where?
At some point in time, there was a videotape of it.
I've
so-
been like,
So we should ask Heather, because she might know. And actually what's funny is I'm not in it. It's the only performance ever done by the theater company when I was there that I wasn't in because there was a horrible family emergency and I had to go up to the cities.
oh.
And they did a performance, and that performance, the one that was taped, is the only one I'm not in.
No one has shown up with it, so
Okay.
it's gold if
All
you
right.
can find it.
Actually,
Hmm?
it's actually gold.
Yeah, right, it's turned
If
into
you can find it. we
I'll
will-
try, but I mean, you know, at this point, it's on like a VHS
yeah,
tape
but-
somewhere, like, you know.
Well,
So, and we did that performance was at the community center here in St. Peter.
hmm.
So
So-
actually, they
yeah.
performed here, I believe. Well, right, there's.
Yes, there was one that was destroyed by the tornado, but this would be the new one.
No, this would be the
The old
original, because this would have been before the tornado.
Okay, so the old community, okay.
Yeah, so the tornado was my senior year.
Mm.
In which, by the way, my senior year spring semester, I took a class with Amy. So, race and gender and performance, something like that, I think. And I did my performance in a FEMA trailer.
Because everything else had been destroyed.
Yeah.
It was my first year, and I was like, whoa.
You're like, welcome to Gustavus.
Everything just was blown away.
Everything's destroyed.
That was an
I'll
old.
build it back up.
Sort of clicking my heels again.
Right. Let's see what else. So we did those conferences. You guys please, I will just talk and talk and talk, so if you have questions, you should just pepper them out at me while I'm talking, cause otherwise I won't know how to shut up.
Go ahead.
I got one. How much justice or like topics of, like social inequality did you include when you were teaching at that very wealthy white, like?
Oh, that's a good question. Quite a bit, actually.
Did you get any flack for it?
I did not get any flack, but I'll tell you why, I think. Because the theater department at that school was very well developed. There were 2 full-time theater teachers there, and that's huge. It was a large high school, but having 2 full-time theater teachers at a high school is like, what? So, so the theater department was very developed. It was my first year, but we were not very well like overseen, you know? So I didn't have a lot of interaction with the administration people. I sort of was like on my own, except with the other theater teacher. So, I mean, I used to I'm sure I did shit I could have gotten fired for, I'm sure. But I had this one student who used to say, "That's so gay," all the time. Like every other phrase out of his mouth, "That's so gay, you're so gay, stop being so gay." Like everything. And so finally side note, I used to do things like, the kids in my room used to curse so much all the time. So finally I was like, okay, fine, once every Friday, everybody as an entire room gets to scream fuck as loud as they want. I'm sure I shouldn't have done that, but I did it. Because then they didn't swear the whole rest of the time. But whatever, we all do things in our teaching moments that we think will work, but so as a reward, I started to say, okay, you know what? If you can go a whole class period without saying gay inappropriately, then I'll give you an incentive. And if you can go an entire week without saying "that's so gay," and then all the other students started listening. So you just to engage him, then all the other students would wait to see if he would hear it so they could call him out on it. Or he would say, "I didn't say it at all," and they would be like, "Yeah, you're right, you didn't." Or he would say it in an appropriate way, talking about, I don't know, who knows what he would be, talking about. And he'd be like, no, but I really meant, I was talking about a person who was gay. And I was like, it's okay, So even those kinds of little things were things that I did just to get them out of their sort of crazy privileged world. But thankfully in a theater classroom it's a little easier because it's a theater classroom. And so when they walk in and I say, "You cut all that bullshit out, we're in a theater classroom, this is a safe place for everybody, so I'll call you out." And I'm that kind of person that I am just I'm gonna call you out on it. What was helpful at that school was it was a very high Jewish population.
Always helpful.
Yeah, and it sounds weird, but because there was a high Jewish population too, there was that sort of other kind of diversity thing that they had gotten over, that helped them understand the other stuff that we would deal with. And so I did quite a bit in that classroom. I probably used some social change stuff without really realizing it, but I used to make them do newspaper theater, and please tell me if I say anything that you have no idea what I'm talking about, okay? So I would do newspaper theater. I would give them extra credit if they would come up with an invisible theater piece, and then if they were gonna do it, then I would come watch. All that kind of stuff, just to get them to try different things just for the sake of theater, but also because I knew I was in this environment that was so rich and college that they needed something to just like get them into reality, you know? So I don't know, that's my answer to that, but I think who knows, if I had continued to work there, then I might have started to get flack as word got around.
As people noticed
Yeah,
what you were doing.
as
yeah.
people were like, whoa, wait a minute, this is not okay with my child, yeah, so there's that. What else? I don't remember
So
even where I
you
was.
had just gone to the conference, because I think this, you know, you're bringing some detail of the story of the troop in ways we haven't heard before.
Okay.
So that's actually really helpful.
Okay,
So you were in the elevator with Bilal, and
Oh my
then,
God, right.
took some workshops, and then you,
we did our visible theater piece
Mhm.
there.
That video.
Oh my God.
Oh, right, the video. Did you write a note that I said there was a video? Cause I probably won't remember anything that I just.
yeah, I mean, we really, we're looking for anything and everything.
Okay, so, we did that here, and then, we had that sort of year of flailing around, of not really knowing what we were doing, with Denise, and trying to get the school to recognize us. I remember we had to, I can't remember, we may have known somebody on the student council, and so, my friend Peter, his name was Peter, he was, in the theater company the second or third year, maybe both. He knew somebody on the student council, and so we asked the student council for money to help us go to a conference later. And that got approved somehow. And that was how we first started to get like legitimized. And I remember my senior year, the theater students stopped being as like, you're so like not part of us. Because there were a couple of us who were also theater students, and that was what helped sort of bridge that gap, because most of us were not theater people. So we were all diversity people, just social change interest in general, things like that. So that's where that came from the campus. And then we started we held our first auditions, which were all student run. So there were like, we would all be there, but then we also decided, you know, to have a structure. So I would be there as the there were always two presidents. I would be there as the co-president with the other person, and we would have the auditions for everyone and do improv, you know, stuff like that. And we would choose that way. And so a lot of people were not theater people then. So for those first few years, you know, we were sort of trying to find people who had the ability, sort of core ability, you know, to be a performer, but still care about the other stuff. And so we did that stuff. We were always, you know, rehearsing late after hours on our own time, because we didn't get any credit for anything, except for the class we got credit for the very first time. But after that, we got no credit for any involvement for anything for the first few years. But we did do a couple conferences other than Omaha. I think we were in Colorado one year. We drove. We did a conference up in Minneapolis, where we also did some speaking. We brought in Zahilia's theater teacher and her troupe, I think, to a Building Bridges conference. So there was a high school theater troupe that came and performed at a Building Bridges conference that we kind of mentored. Let's see what else. We did our first E Pluribus GAC, which we had no idea what the F we were doing. So all we cared about was we were all excited that we got to come for a week before school started and get set up and get in our rooms and walk around campus and be cool with all the like peer, whatever they're called, and the CFs and like rural campus for like a week before anyone got there. And then like just like do crazy intensive improv, because I don't know how it is now, but there was no show. we literally developed the show for ePlurvis the week of, yeah, so, so we were just like, okay, well, let's try that one, device where we crisscross in the sidewalks and say stuff. I mean, we were just like developing the show out of like nothing. And like, okay, let's sit down. And we would sit down for an hour, and up on the board would be like, what's all the stuff that we were scared shitless of when we came into school, or what's the stuff that were important? Okay, all right, bullying, date rape, alcohol, drinking, parties, like racism, like, and just like everything would, like every ism, would be up on the wall. So we'd be like, okay, let's do a sketch about this and this and this and this, and we'd try and put it together. I'm sure exactly how I'm guessing you probably still do it now.
Some shifts, but that's interesting, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Oh.
I'm sure, yeah, but I mean, that was, since we're just doing it for the first time, it's different, but, and then also, some of us, we would split up. Do you still do this, where you then, the theater company would split up, and we would go to speak to the groups with the CFs of all the different campus, and we would talk about it with all the students who had just seen it. And then we would.
Oh, so afterward.
So after the performances, yep, we would go to, when you're a freshman and sometimes you have those meetings and those other things. Yeah, yeah.
Was this directly after the performances you did this?
I believe it was directly after the performances.
Yeah, I think maybe before they had it so structured that everyone always does that. It was more informal that they did.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they were required to go,
Yeah.
but
Cause
I don't know.
Now the way it works is we do 3 to 4 performances,
Right.
and then like every time a group comes in, then they leave and they go right to those discussions, but we still have another performance.
Right, exactly, so that makes sense.
So any student that wants to can come meet us in the Diversity Center like 2 hours after our lecture.
Okay, but that's different, then
Yeah.
it's not like forced upon them,
Yeah.
right.
So how many performances, did you just do one performance?
So we just did one performance, I
Okay.
believe, but I believe by the time we were doing it right before I left, I think there were 2.
Mm.
But I can't, you know what I mean,
Did you
it's
do that in
like,
Anderson?
they were done in Anderson,
Okay.
yep. And we did not do the discussions the first time. Wait, what time is this class over? Cause there are a couple things I wanna make sure I
So you
know.
have an hour.
Okay,
We
so-
can
Okay,
take a break and roll off.
sure. Oh, you need a break? What?
I know.
So we did not do the discussions the first time, cause we didn't really, know what we were doing, but, it was really cool to be in the discussions with the, students right afterwards, cause they are a little more open to talking about stuff, they don't really know each other yet, so if you can make it a safe space, they'll kind of share whatever, and that helps them get to know each other and talk about what they're scared of or what their pasts are and all that kind of stuff. So we did that. I, just as a note personally, I came back to direct ePlurvis SCAC the year after I graduated, I believe. Denise asked me to come back and direct it, so I came back and directed that, and I directed a few of the ePlurvis, or a few of the IMWR shows for Building Bridges a couple years after that. Just as a guest director, and because I think probably it was just Denise at that point, because you hadn't really come in, well, you did.
But it was a one-year
sort
appointment
of,
at
but
first.
yeah, so it was like, yeah. So there was that wavery, probably like maybe 5 years where it was sort of, from the very beginning to, so I came back a lot actually and helped, and since I still knew, quite a bit of the company because of, all the different years, so, I came back and did that. We did a performance, went for Building Bridges 1 or 2 years. The first year or the second year where, like all hell broke loose and like all the tech stuff failed. And like, I remember I was supposed to do, I remember this because it's a personal memory, but like I was supposed to give this like, it was all about like suicide. Well, it was about homosexual relationships and how they affect people, young people, and there was this whole thing where I was supposed to read a suicide note, but all the lights went out, and I didn't have it memorized, because it was a long note, so I had to like improv this entire suicide note in a like, but like, you know, when you put up platforms for like building, for like conferences and you perform on those and they're like these little things, I was like laying underneath the platform with like a microphone. It was horrible. I don't know what happened, but it was like just one of those things at the beginning where we're just like not quite, didn't have all our stuff together, but everything like fell apart, and I was like randomly rambling this suicide note. It was horrible. It worked out fine, but I remember we had a lesbian kiss in that show, and it was like, oh my god. But, and I also remember we debated, actually we had a lot of debate over whether or not we would do it, and what we wanted to do was have our two guys kiss. And we got into these debates about, well, no, what we'll do is have two girls kiss because it will be more palatable for the young audience. And I don't know, I mean, as me, I know that the climate is quite a bit different now, but 20 years ago.
Well, see, this is part of what it's cool to understand and try to parse. It's not as if we're done with homophobia on campus. I mean, we still
Right,
have it.
yeah.
But it's
It
just
is
a
different.
different, yeah, it is different.
Yeah, so when we were doing it, we had discussions about like, well, how can we approach this without jarring an entire audience, you know what I mean? So our compromise was to have two girls, because we're like, well, all the frat boys can handle two girls kissing. That was our reasoning, you know? But those are the compromises we had to make, especially as a student-run organization who we were just trying to like walk the waters and not get in trouble, but like, you know, so we did that. What else? We did training for the CFs. I don't know if the company does that. I almost thought about doing this with the theater company tonight, but I was like, I do not have time to prepare. But we did a spin on the brown-eyed, blue-eyed workshop. So have you learned about that? Does the class know, or?
Does everybody know about
It's
this?
the same thing that Tristan there did.
Okay,
Well, maybe not everyone, or some people quietly not knowing what it is.
Yeah, it's okay if you don't know. Who
Mari,
doesn't
you know
know?
what it is?
It
Okay.
doesn't come to my mind as something.
Okay,
Right,
so the brown-eyed, blue-eyed thing was, I'm blanking on her name. Who did it?
She was short and ornery.
It wasn't Heskett. I can't remember her name.
Dorothy?
Dorothy Heskett? It wasn't Dorothy Heskett,
No?
was it?
Oh, just that's what the name.
Yeah.
But no.
Whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but, it was a workshop where she worked with small children, teaching them about, prejudice, basically. And she took half her classroom and said, everybody with blue eyes gets all the good stuff, everybody with brown eyes gets crap. I mean, whatever.
It's in the
I'm
60s.
really oversimplifying, yeah, from a long time ago.
In the 60s.
Yeah, so, and then she switched it. And she got into, I mean, it was extremely controversial, especially because she was doing it with kids. But we did that as part of the CF training. So, and the please tell me.
Peer assistance.
Oh, thank you, peer assistance. So that first week when you do e-pluribus, we also were doing training for the CFs and the peer assistants. So we did that as a workshop and then discussions afterwards, and it's funny how you think like, oh, it's a bunch of like kids in leadership positions and stuff, like it's not really gonna work, but I'll tell you what, you put 30 people into a little tiny classroom while they're like, I don't remember a lot, but I remember one thing that we did was we took everybody with whatever color eyes or whatever we decided and made them wait in is Confer still a building?
Yeah.
Okay, we had half of them that got to wait in the big, room, like the big,
The big, nice room.
big room, yeah, where they do like the 100 classes or whatever, like that. Wait, do they have 100 here?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
like the lecture classes.
Yeah.
So they got space and everything, and then we took the other half, and we made them all wait in one little tiny upstairs room with no chairs, no tables, no nothing. So they had to stand, and they were all, so it was things like that. And then after a while, even though they get it, they still start complaining. Even though they know instinctually, oh, I get what you guys are doing, then it becomes, okay, we get it, we know what you're doing, can we please go now? And then when we still are mean to them and don't let up on the act, then all of a sudden, they kind of forget, it's a device, and they feel like, oh wait, we really actually are being treated in a different way. And so, that was one of the things we did for the training. So we did some of that stuff. What else? I can't.
Is there a certain way that e-service show ended? Like, what would be the last thing that was done?
Oh,
I'm
man.
remembering a number of different things
Are
at
you?
the time, yeah.
Give me like some example.
Well, I mean, in the mid-phase, I think we would always end it with a song. More than the, Words of Hate, I don't know when that started to be done, so not in your time.
What's Words of Hate?
It's when people, who are doing the stage crossing, which I remember as its own thing,
Such a
start
good
saying
device.
various, derogatory, insults and racist slurs and stuff, and they're saying it louder, and then out into the audience really loud, and then.
We
and
did
the
that.
lights go out, yeah. So
Okay,
what do you call,
so
what
we
did you
did
call
start
it?
that, but I think we opened with that.
Wow.
Mm.
We opened in the dark. I think. I don't know if we called it. I don't think we knew to call anything.
Right.
So it was good. It's nice that, yeah, 'cause
Yeah.
we're just like, I don't know, we'll do this cool thing where we make everybody feel horrible about themselves by yelling out things in the dark. I think, and I could be wrong, but I think we opened because it feels like that would be a weird thing for us to close with.
Well, it would
it
always
wouldn't feel-
close, and then there'd be something uplifting immediately following.
Okay,
and then
so-
an end.
It's possible we did do that, for the very last show that I was there for.
Mhm.
I do have a memory of opening with that for
That's
something,
interesting.
where, we were placed, all around the audience, and we started that way,
Mhm.
and then the lights came up, and then, it like went into some sort of
Mhm.
whatever we were doing.
Mhm.
But yes, I don't think that was the first one, but I think maybe the third or one of the ones that I directed started had that.
That's interesting.
So,
Yeah, I mean, for a number of years, we would do that, and then,
did the lights come up and you did?
yeah,
and
then
then
they
did
would go
talk?
out when the insults were getting to their height, the lights would be out. And then someone, shouts stop, and
Okay.
there's like a little dialogue, which has shifted a little bit over time.
Right.
And then, for a number of years, we had, this great guy, Neo Maroka from South Africa, who had this beautiful voice. He would come out and sing a song, and everyone would feel the world was a better place.
Oh, yeah. We had
Um,
a song in our,
yeah.
in our date rape show.
wow.
I don't know if it's weird, but we actually, date rape, let's put a song in it.
A lot of date rape songs.
Actually, we sang, I don't remember why we have, because I don't remember the structure of the show, but I remember Shantae sang it and then I sang it a couple times. Where at some point during the show, we did, His Eyes on the Sparrow.
Oh,
That
my
song
goodness.
was in it, yeah.
Oh,
So,
wow.
I don't, we were like, we were like deep in like, let's just tackle the hardest, deepest stuff that we can, I mean, that's still what you should do, but I just remember, like, let's just layer it on. But yeah, I think that words thing,
That's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting for me just over time to see which things people think are the traditions that we always do, while knowing that, no, we have not always done
Right,
that,
yeah.
but we have in the, you know, in your memory of always,
Right,
you know. but-
right, exactly, yeah, always means different things to, yeah. Do you guys need do you want a break?
Shall we? Should we take
7.
7 minutes? We're not right on the button of the clock this time. Seeing if anyone has a question at this point.
Oh, so when you were talking about having a big blow up,
Yeah.
and you're like, all these things were coming out and like all this stuff, like I'm really curious of like what caused it to be so like it escalated really quickly. Was it that people are differing in terms of views on like certain sorts of issues, or like the kind of stories related to other people in the group, or like what was?
That's a good question. It's actually all of those things, really.
Oh, okay.
One, because we literally spent like 24 hours a day together, which you know, when you've done that, it just creates chaos, because you're eating together, you're sleeping, literally sleeping together, and I mean that when I say literally, I actually mean literally, not in the way that, you know, when you say literally, even though you don't mean literally.
Sleeping.
Yeah.
Around.
As in sexual?
Yeah, I mean, we were very incestuous theater company,
Awesome.
you know, I mean, okay, well, if you know the theater, you know the theater is like that anyway,
Yeah.
in general. But because we were such a tight-knit group and we felt like it was so much us against the world that we did everything together. And we were rehearsing like every night. And we had not a whole lot of supervision at that point in time. And we were dealing with these topics that at that point in our lives, we were still trying to understand and deal with, you know? So, we would argue just about the topics or about the viewpoints, and we were just talking about this while you guys were on break, but we had a very diverse group, in our company in the beginning. And so, for some of us, especially in a small town, school in Minnesota, talking about the race issues just in general would cause major blow-ups and arguments, because there were so many different experiences, and some also very sheltered, for lack of a better term, of people where just having the conversations talking about what we should do would ignite someone would ignite Zahilia or June, so we had several, we had a few white people, we had some, I think 1 or 2 gay people, and we had several, I was telling Amy at that point in time, we had like 75% of the black community of Gustavus in the theater company, because it just was, you know, we were working hard on diversity as a college in general then, the Asian students, so just as a community together, we would say stupid ass shit to each other without realizing it, you know what I mean? Like, something that can come out of a white girl's mouth to another black girl, just right then and there would be an argument. I mean, I wish I had examples of what I remember what we'd say, but it's just stupid shit, you know? Just ignorant stuff, that we were trying to work out in ourselves, just on top of like, oh, let's teach everybody else how to be welcoming, and you know what I mean? But at the same time, you're learning yourselves, like, you're like, oh, right, I have this tiny nugget of racism inside me, even though I don't want to admit it, and I don't see color, but, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
I hope you understand, like, my sarcastic sort of humor, but you know what I mean? Like, it just, it brings up all that stuff that you think you're on top of, and you're not. Or you didn't even realize existed. I remember in the hotel room in a conference, someone said something about Zahilia's hair in a really ignorant way. And I don't remember, in case you don't know, Zahilia is a black man, from the original, group, and very outspoken. I mean, just on like my Facebook page the other day, he says crazy ass shit, and I was like, F you, Zahilia, and he was like, I still did that, don't worry about it. Like, pissy, like, he's just like that, you know what I mean? He just, and it caused a major conversation, just us as the group sitting in the hotel room at a conference for like an hour and a half, and it caused Denise to come in, Vanita to come in, and then it sparked this huge thing. We spent like an hour and a half in a circle just talking about how to talk to each other and stuff, you know? So, so it's sort of about like everything, but also some, you know, just in general politics, when you don't have any leadership and you're trying to, as a group, police out, like, well, this person's sort of the director, but we're a group doing it, so it's not really there's a director, but you know there has to be because nothing will ever get done, you know. So those kind of politics too we would argue about, but.
Did you feel like you did a lot of like inner group work in terms of like growing together in your knowledge about the certain issues, and then how you all like either were affected or contributed to them? Because you said that you like they would come up in facets when you had these things, but was there like a piece of like we do external like workshops,
Like research and stuff,
or just like or building internally, your like knowledge based off people's experiences or things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we sort of did more of that as we started to understand what we were becoming. Originally, it was all, we would just share personal stories and experiences, and everything would come from like our own lives. Everything just came from that. And then, as we started to understand what kind of structures we worked as in a group, and you know, oh, well, if we're gonna talk about this topic, then we share about things, we pick a topic and say, okay, this is the topic we're gonna focus on, which didn't always end up being that. Sometimes, you know, then it evolves into something else. But, so say, all right, we're gonna talk about sexual assault. It starts from all of our own stories and personal experiences. And then once we realize, we're like, okay, well, let's do some actual, let's get some actual numbers. Let's do some actual research. Let's do, so then we would kind of go external and try to figure stuff out like that. But a lot of times it was just, we were so internal with everything that just using us was sort of how we came together. Does that answer your question at all? Okay. Yeah, so, what else? Yeah.
So what came first when you're trying to address things that were well, yeah, when you're trying to address something, I don't want to leave you in, so what came first?
You mean like how?
Like how did you say, oh, this is something you want to talk about?
Okay, yeah. I mean, at first, there's sort of kind of two different answers. The first thing is, when the class first started and we decided we would talk about sexual assault, somehow it sort of came up like naturally. There was, and I don't want to, I can only speak for my own personal thing. I don't want to break any walls sort of other people, but somehow in the very beginning, in those small groups where we were sharing info, especially the females of the group, I myself specifically started sharing stories of sexual assault or being in those kinds of situations and stuff, and that topic just sort of it just happened, just like organically, weirdly. The females felt a pull somehow that we were, this is a personal theory, but often I feel that females who have those kinds of experiences can kind of feel a pull to other females who have those kinds of experiences. And that's just my like loosey-goosey thing of my own belief, but that's sort of how I feel what happened is there was kind of a group that felt immediately safe, and these stories just started to kind of come out, and that subject just happened. And because that, we didn't really have any discussion. But after that, when we're like, oh, let's keep doing this, it was literally just put out the paper, the butcher paper, whoever was, is it?
Me,
Yeah, and brainstorm, what is the stuff that you're dealing with in your life right now, like personally? We would say, what is it that we care about that we want to talk about? What do we want to deal with? And we would just write it all down. And then we'd spend like a day or two fighting and voting and, you know, like championing the one that we want. And like, okay, well, we all really like these two. Can we put them together somehow? Or, you know, and inevitably, you know, we pick one that not everybody wants, but you just have to get on board and, you know, it happens. But we would just throw everything out. It would just be these huge lists, you know, of brainstorm ideas of stuff. But it was never, for us, it was never like, okay, we're gonna go out into the world, do research and see like, all right, what's going on in the news, what's going on in society, blah, 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 blah. I mean, a bit, but that kind of came after for us. For us, it was about what are we personally dealing with right now? And if it was for campus or if it was for a conference, they'd be kind of different things. But, because if it was for campus, we'd say, you know, what are we literally personally dealing with on this campus that we want to talk about, that we want to work through, and then we go from there. So, does that answer?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, so getting ready for a show, like writing, I guess you guys wrote your script, or was it all improv?
It started as improv, and then we would write down the scripts as we realized, like, maybe we should, like, have
Okay.
a material thing.
So after that process got done, you started casting and determining who was doing what skit or whatever. I guess how did you manage that? And like, was there ever any like problem with like, you know how people have a story to tell, and other people want to be able to have that, be able to step into that role because they want to be like in the limelight, where like it like kind of takes the dignity away from the person who has the voice, who's actually.
Where like the theater stars take, like,
Yeah.
like the theater takes over the social change
Right,
part,
yeah,
sort of.
yeah.
I think that's always a problem, you know, because in general there's that theater part, you know, where some roles are bigger than whatever. There's never a small part, but come on, you know. I mean, you know, I want to be in the lead.
And I want the person who projects their voice, you know, well.
Right, yeah.
And can be understood and
Yeah.
has expressive, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
So for me, I mean, and partly just to balance where the students are. For me, it's always,
It's totally
you
different.
know, I'm so happy that's socially just, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So even as a director, it's different, because the person whose voice needs to be heard may not be the best person
Yeah.
to tell that story publicly.
Right.
And that's the tough part, and we fought with that all the time. Because we did so much improv, a lot of times our cast stayed the way it was, because we would improv stuff and we'd be like, oh yeah, you did that one thing, and you did that one thing, okay.
Yeah.
Just like, you know, and because we weren't scripting and stuff, so we just sort of stayed that way. And we also had like a natural, sort of more outspoken leadership roles versus people who were a little quieter, who, you know, and so that kind of naturally did it. But as it grew, it becomes a harder fight
Yeah.
to make sure you're giving people voices, but also, you know, the responsibility of the company is to teach those people how to make their voice heard. So if that person, you know, you're going out into the world because you wanna, you know, help the world, but you gotta help each other. You know, if the person who has the story, whose voice needs to be heard, doesn't have a voice, then you better teach them how to have a voice so that they can do it the next time, you know? So, it's sort of an internal battle too, which causes blow-ups sometimes, right? You know, I mean, so, but it's something you have to fight against. You can't just let it take over either. I mean, the people, the theater side happens. I mean, it's just part of it, but, you can't let it become completely that, or you lose the social change, and then you're just theater. Which is fine, theater's awesome, yeah. Wait, I have to tell those two stories.
Yeah,
Before though,
absolutely.
if you have a question, that's okay, but I just wanna tell these real quick because they're pretty cool. One was just implementation, since it's a class called Boal and Beyond. In my master's program, we did a workshop with the foster kids of Phoenix. So we brought in a whole bunch of foster children in Phoenix who really don't have a voice. I mean, talk about not having a voice, kids in the system. Like, I mean, there's like so many things that don't give them a voice, like low income, you know, abused, family I mean, just like a billion things. I mean, there's just so many stuff. And the juvenile system and the foster system in Phoenix is so fucked up. But we brought all these foster kids in and did a program with them as actually a class, as part of our class program. We still worked with them afterwards, but to give them a voice to tell their stories. So we used all the social change theater techniques, and we did all these exercises with them, and we gave them video cameras, and we said, go out and tell your story, and we made this documentary about them, and it basically gave them a voice to tell their story. But we were able to use all of those Boal exercises and things like that as the device to get them to have a voice to tell their story. So that was one thing that we did, using those techniques, not in a theater setting, but, you know, just as in general in the world. But the other thing we did was we did an invisible theater piece here on campus at the Dive. I have like 6 minutes, right?
No, it goes to 4:20.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, so plenty of time. So, is the Dive still a thing?
Well, kind of.
Borderline.
Is it for the thing for like freshmen?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So it's still sort of the same
Yeah.
thing. Where after you've been there like twice at the beginning of your freshman year, you're like, okay.
Well, sweat, guess I'm not coming back here.
Right, yeah, okay. So, but in any case, I think it may have been like a special weekend where we knew there'd be a lot of people there. And I'm pretty sure it was at probably the beginning of the year. We did a couple invisible theater pieces on campus, and they were fucking scary as hell, but they were effective. And it's also hard because when you do them on such a small campus, and you know the people, that it's hard to stay in character versus then when you come out later and people are like, oh my God, are you okay from early? And you're like, do I tell that? And then it becomes this thing, like, do I tell them that was not real? Or
not according to Boal, you know.
right, exactly. But to feel safe as a person, you like battle that, because you're like, well, do I really want that person to think I'm a racist?
Right.
You know, like, or for the next 3 years, or should I tell that, you know? So, we did this invisible theater piece at the dive. Zahilia, and Trish were two people who did it. Trish is a white girl, Zahilia's a black guy. Yeah. Oh, have you met
Yeah,
Trish?
she was our first guest.
Okay, do you know they were married?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
They met through the theater company, and now they're divorced, but whatever. Anyway, we went to the dive, we rehearsed it, of course, like a billion times, because you needed to go perfect. So, have you talked about invisible theater in here?
Just a little.
You know, just a little.
Discuss.
Yeah.
Okay, so, you have to have it go perfect, at least for what you can plan, because, there's so many things out of your control, that the people around you are gonna influence, that you have to feel good. So we rehearsed it a billion times. I remember one time we were rehearsing, and we were rehearsing pulling Zahilia off of Peter, who was a white guy. And he was like flailing. I like fell and smacked my head on a chair, and it was horrible, but like, which was unsafe. It should have never happened, but it did happen, so that I was like, okay, we need to figure out how to do
Instead
this.
of having rehearsal, not performance.
Exactly, yeah. So we did this invisible theater piece where Trish and Zahilia dance together in the dive, and Peter comes up, and all the rest of us are just stationed around just randomly, and Peter comes up and starts singing Jungle Fever. You guys know that song?
Mhm.
So, I may be making some references that won't,
No, it's fine.
but, do you guys remember have you ever heard of the movie,
It's fine.
the Spike Lee movie?
I've seen everything.
Jungle, okay, first of all, do you guys know who Spike Lee is?
He's
Okay.
seen multiple.
Okay, so have you seen the movie Jungle Fever? Okay, I'm sure you've never even heard of the movie Jungle Fever unless you're a Spike Lee fan, but okay. So it's basically about interracial relationships. So Peter starts singing that song around them. And that's basically all really that we had planned, that he would do that and that Zahilia would get pissed. And for what we think are fairly obvious reasons. So they dance, Peter comes up to them and starts like dancing, kind of like he's drunk, around them, singing that. And Zahilia gets pissed and he's like, what the fuck, man, like, like, get into this day, like, grow up, it's, and what happened is, all these people start to get involved. Now, but also we have to plan it so we can get the hell out of there, so we don't cause a huge thing and we get stuck. Because, the point is we want everyone else to just be talking about it. It's just an experience to get them to start talking about it. So we're like as soon as it happens, we're trying to pull Zahilia out, but then like all these other people start talking, and there's this one guy who says, yeah, we don't do that here, man. And the thing is, Zahilia is sure he's talking to him. So the guy is saying to Zahilia, yeah, we don't do that here. Which to us, I'm guessing, to everybody in this room, is pretty huge.
Mhm.
Now, we all hear everything differently. So I didn't hear it, and I remember hearing someone else say it as if he was talking to Peter. But no one really knows. I know Zahilia to this day. What happened is we really had to work to get him out of there and get out of the situation, and he took off. And it took us like half an hour to find him, and we were like, oh my God, where is he? What's happening? We don't know. And it caused this huge commotion in the dive about people talking about it, and then we finally found him down at the one of the student houses, the
ILS.
what?
ILS.
The house is down on 7th.
Yeah, whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
Those.
Yeah.
And there was a Black Student Organization, is it still called that? So he was at the house, and we finally found him, but, That was nuts. That invisible theater piece was pretty crazy, because it also stirred up stuff we didn't think, like, we just thought, oh, we'll get people talking about it and stuff. We didn't actually think, oh, we're gonna trigger some actual racism from people, because, you know, in our heads, we're like, no, nobody really, you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
forget sometimes
Yeah.
that you're in your social change bubble, that, oh, wait, they're really, the rest of the world doesn't think like us. Yeah,
It's
so,
extra difficult to do invisible theater in a place where you're known.
it was
Right.
very
'Cause
hard.
The idea is that you do something and you never reveal that it was a performance.
Yeah,
But you usually do it in a big city or somewhere where, you know, you're not necessarily gonna see any of those people
Yeah.
again. And the idea is to send the ripple of, you know, get people engaged and involved, and then start that ripple effect of people engaging with the issue, but,
I almost feel like
yeah.
doing it in a place where you're known can, like, while it does have its like negative things or whatever, I feel like there's a positive side to it. Like, so if I were to do something in the caf, and it's with everything that like with me, say for being in earnest, you know, people can, so they like know Jalen from being in earnest. So then I'm doing having an argument with Sam about something, a racial issue. It's like them seeing me every day afterward, it almost like forces them to continue to think about it. Like,
Except
if I,
that, if Sam plays the racist, then he has to live with that for the rest of his.
yeah,
There's-
Yeah.
There's
that makes
also
sense.
the, everybody knows on campus who is in I Am We Are, and so it's just going, oh, it's just I Am We Are kids again,
Yeah, we had
doing that
it's
stuff.
all that debate, yeah, we had that. What's funny was for us, we thought that, but we were at the beginning too, where,
Right, they were
We
just
were-
getting started, and so
Yeah.
they probably wouldn't even have had that
we
reaction.
didn't really have
Yeah,
it.
no,
We
no,
had
that
like,
was-
oh, well, we know you're in the theater,
That's
but.
us now, though.
I think
Yeah.
that, I don't think it would have that same thing. I think in the heat of the moment, when shit's going down, it doesn't, people don't think of that immediately. They're not, like, people aren't on the lookout for I Am We Are kids trying to screw them.
Didn't Comfort and them do that like a couple years ago? Did something like that?
No, they did more of a guerrilla theater thing,
Oh,
which is,
okay.
I don't, we've been, what do you?
It was Columbus Day.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm.
That wasn't invisible
Never
theater.
mind, yeah, never mind.
No.
It's been a while since
Yeah,
we did
I mean, it's difficult. Even then, when we were brand new, it was hard for us, just in general, because it's such a small community, and, we did a racism one, by the, well, it's not the same anymore, by the POs, there used to, the post office boxes used to
Right.
all be like, in the basement of underneath the CAF, another CAF. Anyway, it was a very highly populated local area, and we did a whole thing about, why are you dressing like you're black, to a white girl. And, when it happened, there were a lot of people who we personally knew around, so it became an issue afterwards of, oh shit, should we tell them, or will they figure it out, or, who can kind of live with it still being out there in the universe, but, you know, so it's pretty difficult in a small community,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is.
Like, would you recommend doing it? Was it an experience that you're like, you guys should try that because it's intense?
I mean,
Or is it like,
honestly, I'm sort of both. I'm sort of like, yeah, absolutely, but then I'm like, well, it's not really gonna work the way it's supposed to work, sort of, you know?
You gotta have somebody in your group with a car, and you gotta go somewhere else
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, that's, if you, I taught, one of the classes I taught at ASU, I had my groups do invisible theater, each group had to do an invisible theater, and they would plan it, and they would tell me where, but it was at ASU, which is like the largest college in the United States, so they were undergrads, so, they would tell me when they're doing it, so I would go with their group, and they would go wherever, to different places on campus and do their invisible theater, or protest, we did a little protest theater as well, so I would go and watch them there, and then that's effective because there's so many people
Right.
on that campus that they don't know.
Right, that's more anonymous.
Yeah, I mean, that's like 50,000 plus students, so, yeah.
Can you tell us more about adding new group members every year? How you would, you said you had auditions?
Yeah,
And what size of group did you tend to
try to maintain with how many people?
That's a good question. And how many, I think we had like a dozen, I think, does that seem right, like to the names on the shirt? That
Well, there are fewer names on the shirt, actually.
Yeah,
8, 10.
yeah. I think probably around a dozen at the most, probably.
Wow.
I don't, how big is it now? I have no idea.
22.
Holy shit!
Yeah, we had to cut that.
Yeah, it's really, really, really hard
Wow!
to,
Make
you
Oh
know.
my
decisions.
god, I'm so proud.
In a radical democracy.
It's been as high as 30, I mean, it's split
Yeah.
into 2 groups so that it can accommodate,
31,
you know, as
20.
many people as wanted to participate, or almost as many people. Then try to go back to 1 because the 2 were sort of, you know,
yeah.
and then, but we can't leave out so-and-so, but we can't leave out so-and-so, but so-and-so's bringing this really interesting perspective, but we can't
Yeah.
leave out so-and-so, and by the time, you know,
But it's actually been working out pretty well this year, cause, what we've been doing is instead of like splitting up and just like everybody doing something, we've split into committees, like subcommittees within the group, and they've actually been functioning very well.
I know, I brought those in and people were pissed off at me.
Yeah, I
And then we
remember
got used to it, I mean, that's
Okay.
just like, you know, it's.
So we're
Oh,
excited
my
about
life in a
that.
nutshell.
We
There we
need
go.
change,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, come on.
People that are trying to,
And so actually, like, I think that the number was intimidating at first, but it's actually been working out in our favor because everybody, like, there are small people in like different, in the different groups, and then we all come together and we're like, this is what this committee has done this week, this one, what business do we have to do?
Okay,
So the functioning is totally.
okay. Yeah, see, that is so incredibly different than what we had.
It's incredibly bureaucratized from what you had.
Yeah, and that's good and bad though, you know what I mean? It's bad in the
For a-
ways that I'm sure you're experiencing, that it's not as, not as intimate.
so
it's
for like,
different,
if there's a blow up, it's hard to address everyone and get to everyone and make sure everybody's on the same page.
but- Right, see, and that's why when I said like we spent 24 hours together, I mean, we rehearsed like every night. Our rehearsals would be so long because there were times where you would just end up sitting in the circle, checking in or checking out. We'd have to time limit stuff because it would just, we would just like be pouring our hearts out all the time. And yes, it's good, but also, you know, bad to some extent. I mean, we had no structure. So anytime we tried to implement our own structure, it was like, it was very difficult. But when we started the auditions, we sort of just ran it like theater. Because there were just a few of us theater people who knew what auditions were, you know, and we just did it like that, and we just said, okay, we knew how many people we were looking for. That's how we did it. We said, this is how many people we have, how many people is our limit. We're looking for 3 people. And we would literally limit it and say, okay, out of everybody, we're picking these 3 people, and that's it. And except for maybe at the very end, we were like, oh, okay, well, we all know this one person from this one, you know what I mean? And you're like, okay, well, let's hope their audition goes well so that, you know, we kind of make exceptions, but, you know, we were so new that I don't think we also had that problem as much of like having too many people. You know, I mean, we had to say no to people, absolutely. But we just did it, we didn't even think of it, we're just like, we're having auditions, we need 3 people, we're taking 3 people. But also, we talked very openly about things you're not really supposed to talk openly about, especially in school, which is like, okay, well, we liked these 3 people, that's 3 white girls, we can't pick 3 white girls, so even though we liked her, she's out, because she's I mean, you know? And that's, it's like, legal, not legal, but it was tough, because we're like, well, okay, even though we like you, sorry, you're a white girl, and we already have 8 white girls, and what we're trying to do, that doesn't work, so.
Why did you guys have auditions?
Instead of like an application.
Or, like, what was the purpose of them?
We did because we were a theater company, and that's all we knew. I mean, we didn't know how else to get people involved. we knew some people as kind of the couple years progressed who were involved in like diversity work and stuff like that. And so we would try and recruit them in, but, you know, we were also known as a theater company, but people were kind of like, I don't understand, like, so what plays do you, like, you know, what plays do you do? Well, we do our, you know what I mean? Like, it was just hard to describe, and so, it was all kind of we knew. And we tried to recruit people who we knew, but it was just the only way, and because we weren't, remember, we weren't school sanctioned, so there's really no like, hey, all these people wanna come be involved in something that takes all their time, but they get absolutely no credit for, you know, so.
One of the ways that's been, parsed now is that it doesn't take all this time. I mean, and I think the group can be as big as it is, because the group meets Thursday nights. And then when there's a show coming up, that's when we meet every night for a week, 10 days.
Yeah, see, that is crazy to me.
No.
But-
It's interesting.
But the way we did it is also crazy. But, I mean, in my memory, I'm sure this isn't true, but in my memory, it's like, we literally met like every night for 3 years. I mean, it's like, that's how intense it felt. It may have not been that way the whole time, but it was a lot closer to that than the way it is now. So it all has good and bad, you know? And also, we were all, by the nature of the kind of people who were involved, I'm guessing this is a similar kind of group, we all had a billion other things that we're doing, right? And I'm guessing that's what the group members are like, you know, I had 2 majors and 2 minors, and I went abroad, and I played rugby, and I was in the choir, and I, you know, and everyone else was like that. So, we all met at 10 o'clock at night, every night, you know, for however long, in like the basements of people's houses, or when Vanita left, we like met, like, had like group meetings in like one of our houses in the living rooms for hours.
People can barely do the one. No, I think we could think about that.
Yeah, so. Any other questions?
It's been so interesting. I
That's
mean, and of
you're
course, the
off.
times are
Sorry.
different, the
Yeah.
people are different, the demands are different. I mean, so you can't just say, oh, they did it this way, we should do it this way.
Right, yeah.
But it's also interesting to see what the expectations were, and what the result of that was, you know, what the pros and cons of that are, and, you know, some of the things that we struggle with, including that the meetings, do check-in business, and there's like an hour left to do anything at all that's developmental of the skills, or, you know, thinking forward about material, you know, is, but I think there's the fear that if you increase the expectations, you'll lose, especially the diversity, because
Yeah.
people are so overextended. And, you know, you probably could get a whole bunch of white women who would do that. You know, it's really tricky.
It's hard, I mean, that's, in general, that's a problem with the field, in general, like, in my master's program, it was probably 99% white women.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's tough to,
And yet you wanna make pieces of theater about
right,
racism. I mean, I'd like to make a piece of theater, or a piece of pluribus, a piece of, you know, about, Baltimore and Ferguson, and, you know, how we're gonna, I mean, when I think of those things, I just say, sure I can.
it's tough too, yeah, cause then even on top of it, then you're like, oh, okay, now are we, like, do we have token people of color in our theater company who then have to play the role of every, you know, so, what, did I hit a nerve?
A little bit.
But I mean, those are the real problems,
It's a
especially
real
on
problem.
a
So,
campus
okay,
like
we
this,
can
yeah.
not have a token, and we can not do any scenes that have to do with,
Yeah,
you know.
it's tough, I mean, they're
Those
all
issues.
like pros and cons, it's a problem, not just here, I mean, this is not just it's a problem in all the social change theater, in all the educational, like, it's tough,
And I don't really think of it as hoping, to be honest, I think of it as.
No, I just use that phrase because
Yeah.
it's easier to,
We need different perspectives genuinely represented,
yeah,
so that we can represent them.
so you can tell the
In a
truthful
show that
story.
needs those things to be represented, you know, and if we're gonna call ourselves that intro to college life play, piece of theater.
Well, we heavily I mean, when we could get away with certain stuff because we weren't sanctioned by the school, but I mean, we went straight to the what was then the BSO, the Black Student Organization, with the couple members that we had, and we're like, okay, everybody needs to get involved. I mean, we specifically recruited people of different backgrounds. We were specifically recruited, our, gay guy friends who we thought might be interested, and, I mean, we pulled hard at that to do that specifically, and did our best in just finding the people who were politically kind of active, who we knew would be, in it by the heart, who would make the time to be there all the time, so. But it's not all, once you start to get organized, you can't always be that way, it's just the way it is, but you can fight to keep some of it, but.